This week has been, you might have noticed, dominated by one news story, and Stuff reported, although who at Stuff actually reported it is a mystery, that it was a field day for meme makers. And like any time the Prime Minister's leadership is actually questioned, which has happened a lot this year for some, wealthy, sorted, entitled reason I couldn't possibly put my finger on, it pulls focus from other things that we should also really be paying attention to. Like the fact that the police have admitted that Labour candidate Rakesh Naidu's manager did not inform the police commissioner he was considering standing for Labour until a week after the initial conversation that Naidu had with him, which is what led the police commissioner to saying that he was disappointed in Naidu, and Police Minister Mark Mitchell claiming that Naidu hadn't met his obligations. It turns out they were both wrong. The caucus meeting itself actually ended up meaning that a 10-year regional growth plan in Queenstown that was due to be announced and signed off had their event cancelled, which, because it included a signing of a new contract, means things haven't started when they were supposed to, and so now everything has to be rescheduled. A report from the Climate Change Commission showed that delays adapting to climate change was leaving communities exposed to future damage and costs. It was revealed that Annie O'Brien, the person who fronted the free speech union's good faith yarns that the Free Speech Union actually lied about plans to have cancelled by an Auckland councillor, which led to threats against that councillor so that they could get attention for their event, is actually behind a Harmful Digital Communications Act complaint against Martin Bomber Bradbury. Meanwhile, the Free Speech Union has once again said having broadcasting standards and regulations to ensure a balance between free speech and hate speech is bad, and that people should just be able to say what they want on public forums with no ramifications. The SIS warned of intensified threats to the country's security that included foreign activities and increased extremist voices from within the country being targeted specifically through driving up Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, and other hateful narratives. Damn! Those do sound an awful lot like coalition party talking points. Weird coincidence how that coincidentally happened. Coincidence-like. Research from RNZ showed 3 parties seem to have ads targeted specifically at genders. The Greens admitted it was actually part of the plan to see how their limited budget can best be used to reach different voter demographics on issues that are important to them. ACT refused to comment, and National went so far as to deny women pay equity and gender-specifically targeted ads, but were happy to admit that they paid to advertise just to men 92 times, and the data shows that they've had their ads seen almost 19,000 times, and some of those times might actually have included accurate and truthful messaging, but chances of that are actually a statistical anomaly at this point. There was the story of this man who has a resemblance to Colonel Harlan Sanders wanting to redeem a voucher at KFC, an ironic admission that the party that dismantled Three Waters because of, racism and set up local water done well was asking the Commerce Commission to look into what happened with their rushed alternative in Wellington and their totally predictable recent rollout issues. A mainstream media outlet finally fact-checked National's tax claims about Labour that Simeon has been pushing for months and found, shocker, they're bullshit. Seek job listing numbers continued to fall, which is another indicator that the economy is stalled, and when job numbers drop but unemployment is at a record high, we actually see wages stagnate, which goes to increasing hardship levels because inflation drives those prices up. Opportunity admitted it still reckons it could find common ground with a racist foreign affairs minister and work with him. Another local authority found out that having ACT local councillors around their table is a pain in the ass as much as they push the same rhetoric as every other ACT candidate despite it not being relevant to the area. If only somebody had tried to warn voters last year. Well, I guess it could have been worse. Some places almost elected a conspiracy theorist who stormed Parliament grounds and covertly filmed Jacinda Ardern that was convicted on Monday of ripping off parent support benefits to the tune of $100,000, who last year promised voters honesty and integrity. She was successful in the prelim voting rounds but kicked out after special votes were kicked in. You dodged a bullet there, Waipa. Former MP and current Hamilton City Councillor Sue Moroney filed a motion to call a meeting on voting systems used in the city after a number of the right-wing council bloc decided to use the discussion on future systems to actually just change the voting system back to first past the post from STV without any public consultation whatsoever. A special council meeting is being called for to make sure that there's a proper debate and the public can still have their say. Oh, and a huge pygmy blue whale washed up on the west coast beaches, which is sad for a lot of reasons, including the fact that pygmy blue whales are solitary animals who live alone, so there's no whale friends out there to mourn its passing. There's a whole bunch of really good reasons to try and stay informed, and I realize it can often feel overwhelming and cause burnout at all of the drama. But research actually shows us that because we naturally equate volume of news with the importance of the topic, broadening our news scope helps us align our perspective with those around us better instead of using the media-driven narratives that are pushed in front of us. And when we live in a world of partisan media coverage, masking, framing, false equivalence in media, that balance is really important to our own mental health and to help us make more informed decisions driven less by our own media feeds. And as the election approaches, it's really important to keep in check. Hello there, Kia ora podcast listeners. This was a really fascinating one to make, because I sat there last night watching the news going, there's going to be a bunch of stuff that we missed because of everything that's in the news. And then I was doing some research on Open Brief today for the B8Gen spot tonight, because that's clearly going to be what we talk about, just the media coverage and stuff like that. And I sat there going, we really missed a bunch of news over the last couple of days while everybody was hyper-focused on what was happening with the National Party leadership. And I get why everybody's hyper-focused, and I'm certainly not going to be critical of that. But it's one of those things that when this happens, as people who ingest news, suddenly that becomes our hyper-focus, and we start putting in a whole bunch of emphasis on how important it is. And yet the leadership of the country, definitely an important topic, but we forget and miss other things along the way. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I didn't get to put in for various reasons. Like while I was literally editing this, there was an attack at Sylvia Park by the looks of it. I'm hearing conflicting stories of gunmen or somebody with a knife. There's a stabbing or a shooting, something like that. I hope everybody involved is fine, but that happened while I was editing, so that's not in here. And there was a really fascinating story that cropped up in here about how an anti-vax, conspiracy theorist-driven school principal in Taranaki had actually collected children's data around vaccines so that they could use that as some way of saying that vaccines are bad. And that's a horrible breach of trust. And she was connected to an organisation called New Zealand Teachers Speak Out with Science. There's a doctor's version of it as well, and it's run by people who completely don't believe in science. She's been struck off the register now. She can't teach. And from a simple, data privacy perspective, absolutely that is the right thing to do. From a reaction to the COVID stuff, also, that's a hell of an overstep. And then while I'm putting this together, I did actually want to make sure that there was a piece in here about Hope Spooner. Now, you guys who have been around for a while might remember Hope from last year's list of candidates to be really concerned about. She was part of a team called Better Waipa. Her father, I think, actually ended up being on one of the local community boards in Cambridge. And she was initially elected on the prelim results, and then the following results after specials and recounts and stuff like that, she was knocked down a peg or two, which was really good. She, like the amount of stuff that I've managed to uncover on her that included sharing ivermectin with other conspiracy theorists in Cambridge through their local Telegram pages, which they were covertly moving around under the guise of being essential activities to go and look after their horses. I thought was really fascinating. There was a whole bunch of I'm taking secret photos of Jacinda Ardern, which was super creepy, at a park with Neve, and she went to the Wellington protest multiple times, and there's comments saying, we should do a January 6th and storm the place, and it was some really interesting stuff that was in there. And when that came to light, her husband, who, I don't know if you guys have come across this story, but her husband is who she blames for this deception where she's taken $100,000 in benefits. They actually took 200 and something grand. It was just over 200 grand, and I think it's been split down the middle. She blamed the husband's meth addiction as being the driver for why she kept doing this and kept going back to him. He sent me some pretty nasty threats about exposing them and how he was going to hunt me down and beat me up for that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons why when she was actually at an event with the rest of her conspiracy pushing Better Waipa team that my mother was one of the stall holders at, and she came up and she berated me like, fuck, if her husband's around, I'm not gonna walk away from this without a pair of broken glasses at least. And I totally get why she was upset at being outed, but seriously scary stuff there. And so to see her actually be pulled up and held to account, I'm like, yeah. And then I found her bio that she put forward for election going, honesty and integrity is what I stand for. And she was never honest at all with voters. And that integrity thing, well, you can certainly see where that played out. So that was an interesting one for me. And then while I was looking over that story, it actually crops up in there that she tried to get name suppression, which was denied. And then she tried to get, she had a good character witness, but the good character witness is Andrew Bidder, who's also a conspiracy-pushing nutjob Hamilton City Councillor, who I can't believe got re-elected, but it's one of the reasons I don't want to visit Hamilton in any time soon. But he had his character witness thrown out because he didn't know Spooner at the time that she was committing this, so the witness makes no sense. Since it was written afterwards, he's only known her since the election, apparently, or just before the election. So there's so many moving parts, but I'm sitting there looking over this, and this thing pops up on my newsfeed going, by the way, Hamilton City Council has now just decided to go to first past the post. They've been using STV the last couple of elections. It was on the list of things to discuss at this council meeting, what are we going to look at doing? It was generally assumed that they'd stick with the status quo for the next election and have a poll of some sort or go out for some kind of feedback from the public, some sort of consultation on what to do next. If there's a next, because at the moment there's all this amalgamation stuff happening with local councils. So that was one of the reasons why people assumed it was just going to be one of those, it's on the agenda because we have to legally, we're going to push it to the side now until we see what else happens. But no, these right-wing councillors come in and go, you know what, fuck democracy, we're going to do it our way, and pushed through this change back to first past the post. And the outrage has been palpable. I've seen comments on Reddit, I've seen comments on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok about just the lack of consultation and going in and making a unilateral change. And it sucks. And you know what? I just sit here the whole time going, if only somebody had tried to warn voters, but also if voters had actually turned out and voted, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. But this is the downside to low turnout in local body elections. You get what other people vote for. Alright, that's a bit of a ranty one. I apologise. I'm going to go now and check out Open Brief and get ready for the BHN thing tonight. Don't forget as well, if you're floating around Auckland this week, I'm looking at going to the BHN meetup on Friday night for a little bit. Might pop in and say hi, and I will be at the Te Tiriti debate at Aroreri College in Papatoetoe on Saturday night. I found out today what my job is there. I'm going to get to usher the candidates around. So my job is literally to tell David Seymour where to go to, get ready for the event and stuff. So yeah, come and join us for that. It's $20 a ticket for that one on the BHN website. If you're a BHN patron, I think it's like $10. It's a bit cheaper. So yeah, feel free to do that. Come up, say hi, bring your questions if you've got them. If not, I will catch you tomorrow. Plan here at the moment is still to make sure we've got the news this week. Tomorrow night sometime. It gets confusing myself. Alright, so I'll see you later. Ka kite anō. Live long, prosper, be one with the force. Hit that subscribe button, I guess, and I will catch you guys later.